Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Hello, dear friends, here at Kardec Radio in the Spiritist Society of Virginia. Paloma and I are here with you for our Friday Inspirational Talks. It's our public meeting, yes, because of the pandemic. We're still more online than in person, but remember, the center has expanded so much that now we are in each other's homes, right, Paloma?
That's correct. We get a chance to not only be at the SSVA, but we have so many friends around the world. We all benefit greatly from this.
Exactly, and especially today. We are so grateful, so honored that we have an opportunity to learn from our guest speaker. Soon, he'll be here with us. Charles Kempf. He's from France. He's a spiritist from France. He's a French spiritist. I know. We know, right, Paloma? In nationality doesn't matter because we're all spirits. But in this case, it matters because Kardec was French in that lifetime. And especially Charles, because he has been conducting true studies in Spiritism, focused on the true foundation that came with Allan Kardec. For those who are not deeply acquainted, we would recommend watching the Netflix movie on Kardec, just to have a feeling about the great struggles of that man and his wife, Amélie Boudet, who really opened a new era in our humanity. It's yet to be understood in the mainstream, but you and I already know, and we are being accounted in this task force of sharing this news. And we're going to get to know today things that probably you have never heard of, new research, letters, documents that were recently unveiled and now are going to be released to us here at Kardec Radio in the Spiritist Society of Virginia to begin it and to feel the connection with this realm that is so uplifting. The good spirits who are with us. Paloma is going to read a message for us.
Let us read a message from the book Our Daily Bread, chapter 157, The Selfish Son. But in response, he answered his father, I have served you all these years and have never disobeyed one of your orders. Yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I could celebrate with my friends. Luke 15:32. This parable does not only introduce the prodigal son. If we look more closely, we also can see the selfish son. The Master's vile teaching displays two extremes of filial ingratitude. One resides in wastefulness, the other in avarice. They are the two extremes that close the circle of human incomprehension. Generally speaking, believers only see the son who abandoned his father's home in order to live in scandalous extravagance, hence deserving of every possible punishment, but few disciples have thought much about the condemnable conduct of the brother who remained under the family roof and who was no less worthy of reprehension. Upon seeing his father's generosity, the inferior sentiments that animate him rise to the surface in a display of selfishness. The vibrations of love that reign in the domestic environment bother him. Like a truly lazy person, he refers to his years of service in the family, and like a prideful believer, he invokes his supposed observance of the divine law and then disrespects his father because he is incapable of sharing in his well-founded joy. This type of selfish individual is very common in the scenery of life. Faced with the well-being and happiness of others, They rebel and suffer because of the aridness that kills them and the jealousy that poisons them. Reading the parable more closely, we do not know which son is the most unfortunate, the prodigal or the selfish one. But we would dare to believe in the immense unhappiness of the latter because the former already had the blessing of remorse in his favor.
Wow, Paloma, the chapter number, please.
157.
157 from Our Daily Bread.
That's correct.
All right, thank you so much. So, a lot to meditate. Life is grave. We remember John Duncan, our friend, British spiritist, a true pioneer, saying to us once at Kardec Radio, life is not a vacation. This message that Paloma reads to us proposes a new reflection. If we are one of the two, who are we? The prodigal? Have we already experienced the remorse and are amending ourselves? Or are we still in the illusions of feeling entitled to so much and yet deeply immersed in illusions, so selfishly? Let us meditate as we say our prayer. Dear God, in this world in which good is becoming ever stronger and evil is truly evident, no longer possible to be hidden, not even inside of us. Depression, anxiety, stress, panic attacks. Signs of that inner struggle and the need to take a new pathway. We gather here together with the true intention of communing with you and one another, nourishing ourselves deeply, and also taking the opportunity of going to the foundation of Spiritism and feeling its strength, visualizing and already dreaming of the day in which humanity will feel its liberating power, freeing our consciousness from the dormancy of illusions. And the best part of it is to finally find you, supreme in love, all just, all good, presiding our lives at all times. And as Kardec says, feeling your providence. Thank you, Father, for loving us so deeply and making us co-participants in life. and giving to us everything that you create. Your abundant generosity makes us feel the envelopment of your love and your healing. As we visualize our homes, our neighborhoods, our cities, our states and countries, illuminated and blessed by you. And we hope that healing baskets are being distributed by the messengers of your love to those who are in great need of healing, of relief, consolation. We pray for the inspiration of Charles as he leads us into a new understanding, consolidating in us the certainty that life is wonderful because you are supporting us at every moment. May we stay under your guidance, feeling your protection as you grant us the permission to begin this special meeting tonight. And so be it. So friends, more than ever, we need to go back to the source. In the United States right now, where we're in, we are still talking about much of a definition of what's happening in the political scenario, the social scenario. And we hope that this connection with Spiritism and friends especially can bring us back to the roots of the foundation of this country. Don't forget that when the United States became independent, friends had a huge role in it. And it comes back now with Spiritism to make us independent spiritually. So we're going to invite our dear Charles to come and delight us with much. Thank you, Charles, for coming here at Kardec Radio and the Spirit Star of Virginia. How are you? Oh, are you muted, Charles?
Sorry. No, I muted myself, sorry. Good afternoon, Vanessa. Good afternoon, Paloma. Good afternoon, good evening to everyone. It's really a big pleasure to be today here with you, in order to talk a little bit about Allan Kardec, this French guy, which was maybe not so known yet in the US, albeit he has millions of followers throughout the world.
Yes. And Charles, for those who are watching us, can you tell them where you are in France so they can locate yourself in the map?
Yes, so I'm French, born in France, in a region called Alsace. It's east part of France, close to the boundary with Germany. And I'm currently living in a city very nearby, which is called Belfort, northeast also of France, close, not so far away from Basel, a Swiss city, and Strasbourg, where you have the European Parliament.
Yeah. And Charles, you know, we've had opportunities at Kardec Radio before, and we still have the interview in our SoundCloud podcasts. Mm-hmm. But for those who are entering here first time at Kardec Radio and the Spirit Star of Virginia and getting to know more of Spiritism, you became acquainted with Spiritism. You were not born in a Spiritist family, right?
No, So I learned about, the first time I heard talking about Spiritism, it was when I was living in Brazil. At the end of my engineering school, instead of doing military duty, I did it as a technical cooperation. And it was a solar power plant transfer of technology between France and Brazil. And that's then where I went to Brazil to build this plant and to commission it. And during that period, it was the first time I heard about Allan Kardec and about Spiritism that I never heard about when I was in France.
But Charles, many people hear about Kardec and yet they don't become Spiritists. So what made you feel like embracing it the way you did?
I think it's quite a story. So basically, I heard a little bit talking about, and the people were stranging that me as a French people, I don't know who is Kardec. And then, how to say, I married. My spouse is Brazilian. And after having, how to say, an emotional shock in the university because she was how to say, badly treated by one of the professors of the university, she started having some troubles, some problems. She couldn't sleep anymore, and depression, as you talked about a little bit during the prayer, and so we went to psychiatrists. They helped a little bit, but after, even with the pills, she couldn't sleep either. And then in the night, she just woke me up, and she was telling about her at the third person, and it was not her voice. So then I was thinking, oh, hey, guy, now you are getting crazy. And the next day, okay, let's find an alternative solution to fix it. And when we opened the telephone book of Recife, which is sick like that already at that time, up Federação Espírita do Estado de Pernambuco, and we called and have been so, how to say, well received warmly, and these people with a big patience and without any judgment, anything, really here only to help us. And this then made me think, oh, wow, behind such behaviors, there must be a strong ideology. And that's then when I started buying Kardec's book and reading in Portuguese.
Oh, wow.
And then I think, okay, it was just the trigger to start. And the Spirit book, it's this feeling of déjà vu. And reading it again, no, it's not possible. It looks so obvious. You must be cheated somewhere. You have really to go through it in detail. And voila, along the days, months, and years, I just got convinced by the strength of the reasoning and the logic and the approach and everything.
Oh,
and then I participated a little bit to the Brazilian Spiritist movements, more as a, how to say, a follower. I was not a worker yet at that time. And then a couple of years later, we went back to France, and then we arrived in a kind of a Spiritist desert.
yes.
We took 6 months or more to find a Spiritist group, and it was 650 kilometers away from home. So we couldn't go so frequently. And that is then when I understood also I was in Brazil to learn. And then I came to France to organize. And I was working in the Spiritist movement. We founded a small group in our close to the hometown and so on. So that was then the start. Also contacts with because I was speaking English, Portuguese with the International Spiritist Council, Nestor Mazzotti, and some others. And then it was, how to say, continuing voilà, until today.
Yes. You know, for those who are watching us, just so you know, Charles not only became a Spiritist, but he became one of the people in the Spiritist movement, especially in Europe, who have been very, not only supportive, super encouraging of the expansion of the movement. Much work. I mean, we could spend here hours talking about the many events and meetings and works and trips. But the most important, we think, quality to highlight in these works is the building of friendships in the good, solely to disseminate something that really changes our lives. And Charles has been this friend of so many, especially in Europe, but not only. Nowadays, because of the pandemic, he's everywhere, right? Now you're more somewhere else in the world than in France.
Exactly, yeah. Also a lot in France, of course, but in US, in UK, in Brazil, a lot of times. And Sunday, I will be in Hawaii. So in the Pacific Ocean, for also giving a short lectures for the people, Spiritist group, which is on that island.
That's
but
beautiful.
Thanks, Vanessa. I mean, the merit is not mine. I'm just taking, the teachings. I'm, of course, like a lot Kardec, and you will see in my lectures, generally, I put quotes of Kardec because I'm not capable to write so good, so clear, so concisely as he wrote. So I'm just a follower and doing my best to bring this to the knowledge of people, because the content is already of the Spiritist philosophy and is so strong, so solid, so comprehensive that for us, I would say it's even easy just to have this work to disseminate it. It needs, of course, a little bit of study, but since the 80s, I had some time to study and to understand it and to exchange also with people around the world, different perceptions, different cultures, and this helped me a lot to see to get conscient now of the universality of these teachings.
Yes, so beautiful. And Charles, we want to highlight that since you are versed in different languages, it makes it so much easier to go from, it's like multicultural, and the possibility of you sharing and bringing back to us, especially nowadays, at a time in which many scholars in Spiritism are revealing to us new discoveries. And we say new discoveries in terms of the depth of the teachings of Kardec. So many people think, yeah, Kardec is just out there, it's outdated. No. I remember Dr. Radiger from Harvard saying, Kardec is a genius. He is a genius, and he deserves more than ever, and Amélie Boudet too, much study. So we're very grateful that you're here. Right, Paloma?
Yes, we are so grateful. This information that we're getting straight from the source, from the French language, is just amazing. We have the books and, Chico psychographies that were all in Portuguese, but coming from Kardec in French,
it's a blessing.
Is truly
and
a blessing.
How important it is to go to the root, because Spiritism is science. As a scientist, we know that we always consider the foundation. That's where we begin. We never rule it out. We never put it aside. It's always center stage, and we keep building. So Kardec is always center stage, as he is in his studies in our centers here in our group in DC, at Kardec Radio, of course, Kardec Radio. And Charles is also behind so many efforts. Let me share here. He's behind the Federation, the French Spiritist Federation. He's the president, and you can see here the website. He's a member of the Spiritist, the Francophonic Spiritist movement. He is from the Center Spiritist Studies Leon Denis, and Leon Denis is top of the line for sure for us in our studies. And he's also a great strength in terms of the dissemination through the Spiritist magazine with a group of friends in Belgium and in France, as well as the French radio, right, Charles?
Yes, Radio Kardec.
Radio
So
Kardec.
Kardec Radio, we have Radio Kardec.
There you go. If you type in wrong, you're going to listen to Spiritism anyways, but in different languages. The original in French, and us, the ones in English. So here we have, and there's the magazine as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the website. I know you have a slide, you're going to talk about it, and maybe we'll just ask you, please share these discoveries because we can't wait anymore.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Paloma. So the subject today is the new discoveries about Kardec. And you will see that a lot of things have been found recently. So not only thanks to the digitalizing of the archives in France, civil state archives or other type of archives, which helps online searches and makes the life much easier and enabling to find a lot of original information about Kardec and Rivail. And also because in these last years, in 2018 mostly, several hundreds or even thousands of original documents appeared about Kardec and Rivail. Letters, communications from spirits, and really original documents, handwritten, and so on, and with a lot of information showing really who he was, how he started, and how he proceeded to bring to the light these 5 basic books he wrote. So I will start chronologically, first with Rivail. So he was born 3rd of October 1804 in Lyon. And on the right side of the slide, you can see the document that you can you search in the birth certificate in Lyon this year, you will easily find it. And what is written there is, so he's born, his address was Rue Sala in Lyon, which was not his home address, but it was, how to say it, a thermal establishment for, thermal water for people. And one of the properties of this establishment was to help mothers who had difficulties to have childs. So it's let's say an ideal place to have when you are at the end of the pregnancy and to get a son. And this is why the address was in Lyon and why he is born in Lyon. But in reality, he lived in a city called Bourg-en-Bresse, and Bourg-en-Bresse is more or less halfway between Lyon and Geneva in Switzerland. And it was also written that his father was currently in Paris, so he was not present when he was born. And we don't know yet exactly why and what he was doing in Paris. It's one of the subjects of our researches also to find out why he was in Paris at that time. And you can see on the picture on the left, Nestor Mazzotti, I talked about a little bit at the beginning. It's really, he was president of the Brazilian Federation and also General Secretary of the International Spiritist Council. And I must really say, I learned a lot with him. He was so generous, so good person. It's really a good example of Spiritist leader. And I was with him then in Lyon in 2005 when we had the inauguration of this monument, which is located more or less where in front of the Rue Sala in Lyon, at the place where he was born. And the city of Lyon helped us to erect this monument. And it's a second monument about Kardec in France. So this one is for the birth, and the second one is in Paris, the Père Lachaise cemetery, where you have the dolmen, which is his tomb. Continuing, there was a lot of biographies written about Kardec. You see here a list which is not complete. One of the first one was Anna Blackwell, 1875. She wrote a biography of Allan Kardec in the first translation she made of the Spirit's book in English. And it was preceded by a small biography of Kardec. But then you see, you had a lot of others. One very well known is the one from Henri Sauce. Henri Sauce was, say, enthusiastic, and he wrote a lot of things. For instance, Kardec was a doctor and so on, and we could never find the evidences about all what he was telling about Kardec, maybe a little bit too enthusiastic. So some of these things have been corrected by other people later on, like Zeus von Thuil and Francisco Thiessen, you see on the top of the right column. And that was really in 2 volumes, the most complete one, which was written, let's say, in the 80s, and it was revised early 2000, just before the 200 years of his birth. But even though they had not the means, the internet and the search facility, and also not all these documents that we found very recently, so they really made what they could. But today we found a lot more things about Kardec and his family. So about his family, you see here the genealogy. I will not go in all full details because we don't have the time. The only thing I would like to stress on this genealogy is his father was Jean-Baptiste Antoine Rivail. So he was in Paris when he was born. He was a military judge and also a lawyer. And several informed. So no biography is telling exactly what happened with him and so on. But what we found is 2 things. First thing we found is a judgment in a court saying that he disappeared around 1807, and nobody ever got any news about him during more than 20 years. So you see the young Hippolyte Léon Denisard Rivail, he was 2.5 years to 3 years, his father disappeared. So it was a big difficulty for him, not having the education of the father. But more recently, we found a little bit more about his father. In reality, he did not disappear. He was not dead, probably dead in the war in Spain, Napoleonic War in Spain. But we found out that he died with 75 years in another city called Périgueux. I will come back on this in the next slide. And his mother, so is Jeanne-Louise Duhamel, and she had, before having Kardec as a son, she had one other son born in 1796, and one daughter born in 1799. But both died very young. The son died with 6 years old, and the small daughter died with 2 years old. So both died before the birth of Hippolyte. And this can help to understand why the mother went then in this establishment, which was helping the people having difficulties to have children. And we found out also quite recently, last year, that he had also a younger daughter, Isaure Rivail, which was born 1806. And we don't know yet what happened with her, but the only thing we know is that Hippolyte was the only son around 1830, at least when he was got married with Amélie. He was the only son. So Isaure probably also died very young. So you see this Jeanne-Louise, she was educating his son. She lost 3 other children very young, and the husband disappeared. So she was alone in reality, together with her mother, Marie-Charlotte Brochard, which was the grandmother of Hippolyte. and also the uncle of Hippolyte, the brother of Jean-Louise, which was François Duhamel. So that was the family where the little Hippolyte grew, with mother, uncle, and grandmother, where he grew. Because his grandfather, Benoît-Marie Duhamel, he was killed by the revolution. In the revolution, he was went through the guillotine, and this was in 1794. So you see that it was not a very easy family. A lot of problems, a lot of difficulty, a lot of sufferings, and this, of course, helped in making him the strong person that he was. When they married, I will accelerate a little bit. You see the parents, when they married, you can see here on the left the document that we managed to find out. You have a lot of signatures, and on the right side you can see some of the names of all these people who were present when the parents, father and mother of Hippolyte, married. And it was all very important people, either in the local administration in the region of Bourg-en-Bresse or in the army, because there was a big army, the Alps army, which was located there close by, and where the father was a judge. He was judge, and then he knew a lot of these Thomas Sandoz, Fulques d'Oraison, and so on. Thomas Sandoz, for instance, he died in the Rivoli battle, which was led by the General Napoleon, who was then, the leader of France, emperor in 1804, so a couple of months after the birth of Kardec. So this gives you an idea of the family and all this. It was really very well-known people that you can still easily find when you look in the history of France. This is then the document about the birth of Iso, that you also now once we have found the date, it's very easy to find into the archive also in Lyon, because she was also born in Lyon. And on this document, it's written that the father was not in Paris anymore, but he was living in another city called Belvez in the department of Dordogne, which is southwest of France. And here again, we are trying to understand why he was there, what was he doing there. And here you see the document showing this judgment in a court for judge, telling that because, for marrying, for instance, in this case, you need to have the father must allow, and the mother must also allow the son to marry. And since his father was disappeared, they needed to have this judgment of saying that he was disappeared. Voilà. And in this document, you see présumé décédé en Espagne, so probably killed in Spain. We found later on 2 other judgments. Because the poor Jean-Louise, she needed always to have this type of judgment when she wanted to buy something or to sell something, real estate or whatever. Again, you needed also to prove that it is your property and so on. So, when somebody is dying, it's easy. He's died, but disappeared, it's more complicated, because you never know. Maybe the person will come back after a given time. But the laws of the country, of course, are enabling that more than 5 years, for instance, it is considered as like if it is dead, in order to transfer the belongings to Jean-Louise. So here you see also the document showing that he died in Périgueux in 1834, and we found out that he died poor. Because in this other document, when somebody is dying, you can look for his succession who inherited from his goods. And here he was, housed by a bar owner in Périgueux, to whom he promised the inheritance of all his goods, But when he died, then this bar owner went to see where are the goods, and in reality there was nothing. He had only, how to say, the benefit of an income, of a capital which was belonging to another person. So we found the name of this person, Marie Lavaur, Widow Trémoulet de Lessal. And we found out also, we found where she was living and so on. And we found that in reality, he was doing everything to as he would have disappeared. But in reality, he simply, I think, abandoned his wife and the son. And he was, how to say, together with this other person, which was widow, and lived with her also in Dordogne, so not so far away from that city of Belvès, this city of Lessal that you can see. And in June, we were not confined, so we could travel a little bit, and I had the opportunity to pass nearby and to take a picture of that house where he lived together with his wife. So you see, well, it was apparently not such a serious person, but anyhow, the little Hippolyte did not benefit from the education of his father. So continuing, so you see the type of things that we can now quite easily find in the internet. Maybe not so easy, but when you have one element, then you have a new information, then you go behind this information, which gives you another one. And how to say, progressively like this, you can find a lot of things, not all, of course, of what really happened. And then, so he was educated first in the school of the city where he was living, Bourg-en-Bresse, or a small city nearby called Saint-Denis-les-Bourgs. And then when he was around 10 years old, so 1814, more or less, he went to the school of Johann Heinrich Pestalozzi in Yverdon, Switzerland. And that was then a very famous educator, following the educational method of Rousseau. And this school in Switzerland was really famous in whole Europe. And the students in that school came from Switzerland, from France, from Germany, UK, from all around Europe. So this young boy had very young, how to say, all these friends from different cultures, different religions, different languages, and so on. So it gave him a very good cultural awareness, open-minded in terms of religion and so on. And this was also very fundamental for the mission he would then develop by codifying the Spiritist teachings. And we don't know yet exactly when he left this institute. It was probably 1820 or 1821, because what we found is that in 1822, he and with his mother and his uncle were already living in Paris. This famous address, which is 117 Rue de la Harpe. So a lot of people visiting Paris, the Rue de la Harpe is still existing, but it's a very small street in the Quartier Latin, so close to the Seine River. And today the numbers by far do not reach 117. So it was, okay, where was it and so on. But when you look again in the archive of Paris, now you have the city maps from that time. And you can find out that the Rue de la Harpe, in reality, at that time, it was much, much longer. And it went up to the Jardin du Luxembourg. And the number 117 was, the location is where today we have the Boulevard Saint-Michel. And this square, as you can see here on the map, compared with this Google Map picture here on the right, you can see that the same shape, same buildings are still existing, and it is today 51 Boulevard Saint-Michel. So that is the first house where they lived in Paris, and other information that we could find recently. So then we could also follow a little bit his percourse in Paris. So I did not put everything here. In 1823, so the year after he moved to Paris, 1822, he was already announcing that he would publish a book about arithmetics. So he had 18 years, not yet 19 years old. He was already writing a first book about arithmetics following the method of Pestalozzi. And it was a kind of announcement for pre-selling the books, helping in printing it later on. And this printing happened the same year, later in October. And you still can find also now the French National Library, Bibliothèque Nationale de France. You have a lot of books which are already digitalized and that you can then access directly for free online. You can find this original copy that is there of this book, where you see the hand signature of Hippolyte Léon Denisard Rivail. You saw when he was born, his name was Denisard Hippolyte Léon, but himself then inverted the sequence and always signed, like it is written here on the top of the slide, Hippolyte Léon Denisard Rivail. With Hippolyte, there is also 3 or 4 different ways to write it, but he always wrote it in this way. This is why we adopted his own choice of spelling his names on the slides. In 1825, you see, he was 21 years old. He already opened the first degree school, and this was announced in August. So means the first, classes were starting in September 1825. So with 21 years, he was already teacher and also director of a small school. And this happened then in Rue Richer, as you can see here on the slide. Then it was growing. They had to find another place. It was Rue Vaugirard. And then it was further growing, developing. And it was not only primary school, it was also secondary school. And the address was in 35 Rue de Sèvres. And that was really the peak, I would say, of his career in Paris as a teacher. So he had this school, his own activity in his own institute, but he also wrote several other books. He wrote, advices to the government of how to improve the education in France and so on. So he was really very well known in terms of education, and he participated also to several scientific societies. Then here you can see then lower on the slide, 1840, I put it in red because it's one of the big events which happened in his life. We don't know yet exactly why, but he had to sell this very well functioning institute to another person, which is this Mr. Pilotet. The biography are saying that his uncle, the François Duhamel, was, gambling and in casino and so on, and lost a lot of money, and lost money basically of the family. And in order to because of this debt, apparently he had to sell this institute. So the dates are not exactly correct in the biographies, but this date of 1840, we found all the evidences about it. And then you can see between 1840 and 1850, or even until 1855, he never really managed to come back and to build a new institute. He was doing a lot of other activities. He was working in a bank together with La Châtre. He was also working advisor of insurance company. He had also some activities in theaters. And in 1844, together with Amélie, because he was married already, he opened a pensionate for girls. You know that education at that time was mostly for boys, but he and Amélie made also something for the girls. And this worked reasonably during 5 or 6 years, as you can see. It was at this 18 Rue Mauconseil address, which does not exist anymore today, because, you know, this period was before this big boulevard, this opening of big streets that have been made in Paris through basically Haussmann, which is being well known. And 1850 came a second big event, which was complicated the things. It was already the second Napoleon III, which came, and he was Emperor of France. So the regime was not so free anymore. And there was this famous Falloux law, which introduced back the religious influence on education. And so all these Jesuits, they came back to how to say influence and dominate the teaching in France. So there was no really space and possibility anymore to continue this religious free teachings that he made since the beginning. So again, here he had to continue. He still was a maths teacher, and also he wrote a book with Levi Alvarez, which was another educator. He had a religious school, so he continued even so he's working. And then in the next year also, we found out that he had a lot of activities in theater, patents, accounting. You see, kind of small jobs to survive, to have the sustentation of his family materially, to have enough money for renting a house, for the food and so on, for the needs. And so his life was really not easy. Between 1840 and 1855, so 15 years, he really had to struggle and to battle to find, let's say, a sustainable activity. And then 1855, he was living already in this address that is well known by the Spiritists, 8 Rue des Martyrs, where everything began, and which was the address when he published the first edition of the Spirits book. So where do we get all this things from? I told you it's from internet searches, which are much easier to do today, digitalization of books, digitalization of archives, and so on, which enable to find much more details, all what happened, to follow the track of his activities and so on. But that's not all. We also got, as I told you, a lot, hundreds and even thousands of new documents which have been found. I would say time have come. They fall down from the sky. I don't know how to say it, but it's really, how to say, interesting to see how all these documents have been found more or less at the same time. So clearly there was something happening to try to restore, how to say, all this history, all these historical facts, not only about Rivail that I just explained you a little bit, but also about Kardec, this Kardec period. And the documents are basically two sources. One source was in Brazil, these famous documents that I heard this rumor since the end of the 90s, that Canuto Abreu had a lot of documents, original documents about Kardec. So they were already very, how to say, not disclosed by the family. He died, I think, in 1980, around that. And since that time, these documents were kept by the family without enabling anyone to have access to it. And all of a sudden, in 2018, it was opened, and they made an agreement with the Fundação Espírita André Luiz, a big spiritist non-profit organization in Brazil, which, how to say, started a work to hygienize, clean, make the good conservation, make pictures, scanning, writing first in original language because it is in French, then translating into other language and so on. So a huge work of this around 700 documents from this Canuto Abreu source. And a second big bench of documents, so these are, I think, more than 2,000, appeared also in France, in a library which is located 42 Rue Saint-Jacques. The Les Maris, it's still called Les Maris. Les Maris, you know, was one of the followers of Allan Kardec between the 1870 and 1900. And his library is still existing today. It's of course not from the Lemari family, but it was then, how to say, sold and then inherited and sold again and so on. And the owner of this library found these documents and just started selling them. And here also one person from Brazil made an offer and bought all the documents. And this is now part also of, thanks God, this person is a person which is open, which is also committed to publish all these documents. I had also the opportunity with the owner allowed me before selling the documents to scan everything. So I took 2 days to scan thousands of documents. And in order to not having this information being lost or putting back into closed out of access to the researchers again. Okay. And also what's something which happened this year, 1st of September, as you can see on the slide, there is a new portal opened by the University of Juiz de Fora. It's called projetoCardec.ufjf.br, like Brazil. And they made this portal, and the how to say, the objective of the portal is to put all these documents accessible to anyone for free wherever in the world. So you can go there. The portal is open already. There are already something like 60 documents, more or less. We found also some documents in France, around 200, that we also have already everything scanned and written already in French. They will be put here as well on this portal. And there is a lot of support from university professors and people, as you can see here, just a short list of the people supporting this, and very skilled persons are helping it and to having this work done. It's done the university standard, like there is a similar portal, for instance, for the Isaac Newton documents in Oxford. You can see the level of quality of what they have done. We have already translated the portal in French, so it will be very soon bilingual. And I here encourage also, please try to gather also some English-speaking persons to collaborate with them and to have this portal also in English, because it's a huge work. It will take years. We need tens or even hundreds of people for working it. Transcriptions are more or less done, translation into Portuguese as well, and it needs, of course, also then to be translated into English so that the researchers from the whole world can access to it. So this is now really, I'm very happy to see all these things happening. It's of course not in France, it's in Brazil, but okay, the work which is done is absolutely serious and professional. And I'm really happy because all these documents will now be will be made available to everyone. Okay. Some other examples of these documents we found the first letter that Hippolyte Léon Denisard Rivail wrote to Amélie Boudet. They were not married yet. And the letter is very interesting because you can see that since your father answered to my mother, allowing me to write directly to you. So I'm very happy to write directly to you. And really here you can perceive from this letter that he basically writes, I saw you only once, but it was enough to see myself that all these known persons have told very good about you is true. So it was really that, how to say, first contact between two souls who came basically to come together, and there was absolutely no hesitation. And there was also absolutely no, how to say, all these, formulas and these manners from that time. It was really very straightforward, very open from the heart. And it's really very, very, very good to see it and to read it. It was published already in Portuguese in this Revista Cultura Espírita. And you see here, Vanessa, you have a lot of things if you want to talk about, develop, read, and You can do an emission only about this on Radio Kardec to discover these really wonderful things. My wife sometimes, my spouse is telling, hey, this is intimacy of them. You shouldn't disclose these things. But you will see it is so nice, so beautiful that it's really, how to say, showing who they really were, and very, very good persons. Yeah. And basically, they married. The first letter was in August, and they married in February the year after. And here again, you see, we found this picture. It was not known before of Amélie Boudet, a little bit younger than the picture we have usually from her. And we found, of course, also the original documents with all the details about their marriage. Then I told you Kardec was was member of a lot of scientific societies. We found a lot of documents about it. I will not show all of them here, but we found this document here, which is, how to say, the document freeing him from the military service. And you have a small square on the bottom explaining exactly what he did. Basically, the military service was very young at that time. It was more than 6 months. But since he was the only son, his father was died, now disappeared. He had an exemption of the military duty because of this reason. Second reason is there were not enough teachers in Paris. So this is also a reason of having exemption for the teachers of the military duty so that they can continue making their work of teacher in Paris. And as you can see, there is no pictures on the document at that time. Photography did not exist. But you have a description, 1.69 meters, brown hair, and eyebrow, brown eyes, high forehead, straight nose, and so on, describing it was the standard at that time to identify the person. Continuing, you see here some documents. I show only 2, but there are something like 15 or documents of different scientific societies he participated. This Institut Historique is very interesting because we were looking for who were members of this institute. And you can see Ampère, the people knowing electricity know very well who he was. Bottin, who made the first address book of Paris. And you can see also, it's interesting, Lacordaire, Lamartine, and Lamennais. And those 3 are known by the Spiritists. Why? Because they died a couple of years later, and when Kardec started the Spiritist magazine and codification, the spirits gave some communications, and Kardec was writing, it is easier to recognize and to certify the identity of the communicating spirits when you knew them when they were alive. And here we have the evidence that he really was knowing Lacordaire, Lamartine, Lamennais when they were alive. No? And also Monvoisin was also in the Spiritist movement later on. He made these famous pictures of Kardec and of Joan of Arc when he was participating to the Spiritist Society of Paris together with Kardec. Okay. They also educated, they had no natural child, because when they married, Amélie was already 37 years old or so. So it was, how to say, maybe a little bit difficult to have children at that age. But they educated a young lady. They had a daughter. It was not a natural daughter. It was also not through adoption, because adoption was not possible at that time. But this young lady was living with them. Apparently, she was from very poor parents or unidentified father and things like that. And they educated her. We also found evidences about all this into these letters and documents. And we published something in French in the Revue Spirit, as you can see here. It's, how to say, the original French version. The English version, you know it also very well, the Spiritist magazine from our dear Vanessa as well. And it was also published into Portuguese on this blog, Ismael Gobu blog, and you can find then the letters and the transcriptions and the evidences of this young lady. Unfortunately, she also did not live very old, because she died with around 10 years old in 1845. And here also we found very clear evidences in this original document. I show two more here on the screen that will be very soon made available to everyone. So this is just a rough idea about all we found concerning Kardec, Allan Kardec, in his phase before he started studying the Spiritist phenomenon in 1855, and before he wrote his first book, which is a Spirits book, which was first edition in 18th of April 1857, 163 years ago already, and where he adopted the pseudonym of Allan Kardec, because he did not want that to give the impression that he was using his name as a teacher, as a famous educator, to promote something different. So he took this pseudonym, Allan Kardec, to be more neutral, let's say, in the initial phase of the dissemination of these teachings. And he kept it then at the end until he died, Allan Kardec. And this Spirits book is really, I called it here, a revolutionary book. Why? I think still today we did not perceive the full, how to say, importance of this book, because here also we have now some other studies who have been made, particularly by Paulo Henrique de Figueiredo. You see this book on the right top side of the slide. And he made, the book is in Portuguese, unfortunately, so far. We are starting translating some parts from it into French that we will publish also in the Revue Spirit. And he made a very extensive study of the context in the first half of the 19th century, about philosophy, about the science, about also the political regimes and so on. And he came with some good evidences, because you see, in the Spiritist magazine 1863, Kardec wrote that the conditions, it was in these extremely favorable circumstances that Spiritism arrived. Earlier, it would have run into all-powerful materialism. In an earlier time, even earlier, it would have been drawn down out by blind fanaticism. And we always had some difficulties to understand why he wrote that. And now I think we understand better, because after French Revolution, which was very close, a few years after the American Revolution, independence, the philosophy and the psychology were following a spiritualist paradigm. So the psychology was studying the soul, and the philosophy admitted very clearly that mankind has a soul which is independent of the physical body. And the main philosophers who founded this is Maine de Biran. So he started with this spiritualist philosophical school in French, which was called the French spiritualism or the rational spiritualism. And he was then followed by Victor Cousin. Victor Cousin was very well known. He was professor in the Sorbonne in Paris, École Normale Supérieure. And all the courses of philosophy in France were based on this French spiritualism. So the philosophy, all the teachings to the young people, students, was spiritualist. So this explains why these people were already, how to say, had this spiritualist model in their education. And when the Spiritist phenomenon appears, this mediumship phenomenon and turning table at the beginning and so on, so the first Spiritists were basically coming from this rational spiritualism. The main principle of this was freedom, liberté, égalité, fraternité, Statue of Liberty also in the US. So these values that the people fighting in this revolution managed to get free of all this domination of the kings and of the religious and all these things. No? And this philosophy was exactly following this route, no? Freedom, free will, the fundamental role of the will, which is a spiritual origin. The will, according to this philosophy, cannot come from the brain or from the body. It comes from the soul. And continuing, this was also teaching autonomy, as per the title of the book I show on the top right. And this is opposed to heteronomy. You know, heteronomy is you have to do this because it's written in the book, because God has said it, because whatever, because I say you have to do this. Even if you don't understand, you have to do it because I ask you to do it. This is typically heteronomy. And the French Revolution, I think in the US, the same type of things arrived in the same moment, because all these philosophers were communicating throughout the world. I think these people who brought these ideals also of the American independence were following the same routes. They conquered this liberty and also the autonomy. So I do it because I want, I do it because I understood it, but not because I am obliged or because I fear a punishment or whatever. And this is also some fundamental principles that Kardec followed in the Spiritist teachings. In the period of Restoration, you know that after the French Revolution, you had some oscillations. Then the Napoleon I abused and lost all these wars, and so then you had the Restoration. The brother of Louis XVI came, and so it was a kind of a return of the monarchy. And then there was a new revolution, and then came the Second Empire with Napoleon III. And both of these regimes, they were fighting again against this autonomy because of the religious influence, of course, and also because, the king wanted also to have people doing what they asked, good workers, and people not discussing too much, you know, which would jeopardize their authority and their regime. And but Spiritism came at the right moment before these things happened, and bringing this through the phenomenology, the evidences of this rational spiritualism, because Mendebiran was mostly by introspection, but then Kardec, through the observation of the mediumship phenomenon, having the evidence that the soul is surviving after the death and that it still can communicate and giving proofs of his identity. So this rational spiritualism philosophy was then enlarged from the incarnated spirit study to the study of the disincarnated spirits as well, so through the whole cycle life of the spirits. So this is why this book was so revolutionary at that time. And this is something that this book helped me a lot to understand. So I really encourage to go through this book, because it helps a lot to understand a lot of things, and also a lot of difficulties we have in the Spiritist movement today, in particular with this, you know, religious aspect and all this. It's a question of culture, a question of language, but also this question of more fundamental notion of autonomy and heteronomy. Also, between 1858 and during all his action into the Spiritism, Kardec suffered a lot of pressure from the clergy, in particularly after he published the Gospel according to Spiritism, because then Vatican decided, okay, all the Spiritist books are in the Index Librorum Prohibitorium. So it was forbidden to read those books. And Kardec was always telling this was a big opportunity for Spiritism, because when something is forbidden, you know, with all this freedom after the revolution and so on, the people were more attracted even to get the book to see why it was forbidden, you know. And in fact, instead of breaking, it was helping indirectly. There was also this auto da fe in Barcelona in 61, burning the several Spiritist books that he sent to Spain. And also we have now in all these documents I told you about, because I did not see everything yet, but I saw more or less what is in. We have some evidences that there were some Jesuits infiltrated in the Société Parisienne des Études Spirites. And what is interesting is Kardec, he had some Spiritist session at his home in Villa Ségur during the weekend. And he was asking to the spirits, is it the one I'm thinking about? Yes, but he's not the only one. The spirits answering and giving him some hints. And the spirits was even telling, you just published the Heaven and Hell book. And the people who most were buying it were exactly these Jesuits. And they had a very, very tough time to find some arguments to answer or to bring things against this book. And the spirits congratulating Kardec for the strength of the reasoning and the solidity of all this teaching contained in that book, that then these religious people had a huge difficulty to tell the contrary, the opposite. And he also suffered, Kardec also suffered big pressure to declare Spiritism as a new religion. And at a given point in time, he was a little bit hesitating, but he resisted until his death, and he made a very good speech in the ceremony of November the 1st, 1868, which is published in the Revue Spirit of the same month, and where his statements are extremely clear, explaining why he never declared the Spiritism as a religion, because the word religion has a lot of meanings, and for most of the people, religions means dogmatic approach, heteronomy, all these things I explained you shortly before. And it's also, this is my religion, so everyone has his religion, and you create immediately divisions from this, whilst the Spiritist has a much bigger, universality, because Kardec had really some followers from Jewish people, Catholic, evangelic, or people from different religions. And today in France, we have also Islamic people which are following Spiritism. So this is showing that if he would have given, a particular religious color to the Spiritism, it would have lost this big universality. So this is something extremely important, because in Brazil, the Spiritism is really, has been religiosified. I don't know if this word exists in English, but I think you will understand it. So Spiritism took a really strong religious character in Brazil, but this doesn't work in France. When you have, in France, you come and say Spiritism is a religion, you have half of the people, they stand up and they go out of the room, Why? It's not because the people are against religion. The people are against that this heteronomy is coming back, because they have fighten so much to conquer these liberties that they don't want to come back to the heteronomy and to lose all these things, And this is a cultural fundamental aspect that is explaining why we have this problem in the Spiritist dissemination in Europe. In particular, when it comes, the copy-paste from the way it works in Brazil is definitively not working in Europe, and probably also not so easily in North America. Okay, so I'm coming to the end, Vanessa. Sorry, I passed a little bit. I want to show here this image, which I like very much. Jesus gave us this very wonderful example when whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. He was himself washing the feet of his apostles, showing them what is a characteristic of a good leader. And interestingly, this lesson is slowly but surely being understood everywhere. Because then you look a little bit into management courses about leadership in the company I was working for until this year. You see all these books, all these examples. So even in the business, in management courses, you have this kind of notion which is now coming. And I see this really very, very positively. You see, the good leader is the one which is together with the team. It's not the one which is in an office giving just, how to say, benefits and also punishments. It's not the heteronomy, you see, it's the autonomy together with the team. And that is how you motivate people, you explain to the people what you want and so on, and you come quicker and closer to the result. And also you see on the right, the Pope. Why is this Pope so, how to say, famous, recognized? There is also something about this. He has some humility in his approach, and this is now being more and more and more recognized everywhere. And this is my conclusion. So unshakable faith is the only one that can stand face to face with reason and all human epochs, giving this deep autonomous approach of the Spiritist teachings. So thanks a lot for your attention. Sorry, I was maybe a little bit too long, but I'm still available for your questions. I have no problem, no commitment to this evening or tomorrow morning. So I'm here for you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Charles, for so much that we didn't know. Right, Paloma?
That's right. I couldn't help but Google the addresses to see where did Kardec live? Well, how close was to some reference points we knew. Definitely triggered our curiosity to further study, for sure.
Yes. And Charles, when you talk about humility in Kardec, in the movie that was released on Netflix, somewhat we see that he was humble in spite of all of his titles, the much he accomplished before Spiritism, with Spiritism. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think it was one of his strong quality. He was humble. He was not arrogant, never. He was, of course, strong in the argumentation, you know. I imagine myself argumenting in front of him, you know. He really, for sure, had this persuasive way to teach and to tell and to argument the things. We can have an idea of it in this small book he wrote, What is Spiritism? When he had the dialogue with the religious guy and then with the journalist and also with the scientific guy. And there you can see the strength of his arguments. But you can see never, ever arrogant, always explaining with a deep respect for the opinion of the other people. And this was really one of his strong quality, which is then, how to say, you can find throughout the whole 5 books and the whole codification.
Very interesting. There is much for us to know. And it's good that you emphasized the aspect that he was pushed to make Spiritism like another religion, and he resisted.
Exactly.
You say that in the world we are following through his steps, or are we somewhat, and this is just, we're not saying it's a final statement, but as you observe Spiritism throughout the world, would you say that we are, as a movement around the world, following Kardec's resistance to be another religion, to make Spiritism another religion, or are we already surrendering and saying, yes, it's another religion?
Look, I would say it depends. In Brazil, clearly, I don't say it took really a strong religious characteristics. And the reason is very simple, is because, I'd say, Brazil is mostly Christian, Catholic and evangelic. And so there is not such a big diversity as we have as in North America or in Europe, where you have Jewish, Muslim, Hindus, Buddhists, which they poorly know who is Jesus, you know. So, and also they will perceive when you come and tell my religion Christian religion is better than your one. It's clearly not the way to disseminate it. And it's a wrong way to disseminate Spiritism. But I would say that it worked in Brazil. So this is, you cannot discuss. You have millions, 4 millions declared, and maybe 20 or 30 millions people which are, how to say, with affinity, let's say, sympathetic to Spiritism in Brazil. So it's a big success. This is undiscussable. But again, most of them are following still this, how to say, religious. They somehow go, I don't say it's good or wrong, but they go in the Spiritist center as they would go in the church or somewhere else. And this is in Europe more difficult because the religious people in Europe, they go to the evangelic or Catholic, they go to their church, Orthodox, whatever. They will not come to a Spiritist center, you know. So this is why Kardec wrote also, Spiritism is not for the people who have a belief and which are satisfied from this belief. Spiritism is for people who are looking for something, who try to understand, or people who are not satisfied with their belief. So this is another reason why coming with this, how to say, religion qualification of Spiritism, you do not go to the right public, you know. The public you should focus on are not interested in this religious aspect. But one thing I want to finish answering your question, the fact that the people in Europe or in North America, they don't want heteronomy, they don't want to hear about religion anymore because of these wars, abuse, Saint Barthélemy, religious wars, and whatever. To say mostly because of this. This does not mean that they do not believe in the ethics and that they do not accept this universal morality, which is explained in the book 3rd of the Spirit's book. Because those teachings, when you tell, how to say, be humble, charity is the law of liberty, is the law of society, is the law of reproduction, destruction, all these laws, they accept them fully. I would say even they accepted maybe more. Why? Because it's compared, the referential is the law of nature. You know, it's not because it comes from a religious teaching, a particular one. They accept it because of this universality. And you see the laws in French or in US or wherever are based still on this ethic. You cannot steal, you cannot kill anyone, you must respect the freedom of your neighbor and so on. So all these principles are in the laws. So you must come and talk about universal morality rather than talking about a religion or a particular religious leader, you know. And when the people understand better who is Jesus, for instance, then they accept it. But if you come first with that, they will feel that you are pushing them into something that they want to go back, you know. So it's just a question of approach. It doesn't mean that the people, they are rejecting Jesus. That's not the thing. And what is the most important, they are not rejecting the morality. And the second aspect of all this is, you saw this question of autonomy, heteronomy. I always give the example of my mother. She told me always, she died this year, unfortunately, but I mean, she was already 92 years old, and she's now free from this body who made her suffer and so on. So, okay, I feel her very happy in the spiritual world, so no problem. And she always told me, I'm born Catholic and I will die Catholic. So she was not ready to make this step from heteronomy to autonomy, you know. She needed to have somebody trustable telling her what she should believe or what she should do. So this works, of course, when you have trustable religious leaders. But unfortunately, we can see today that you have more and more religious leaders which are not trustable. Fanatism, in whatever, you can find it a little bit everywhere. And this is exactly the problem we have today. And this is why the world is moving from this heteronomous approach to an autonomous approach, together with the development and the evolution of the humans, you know. And this is, we are now following this step, but we are still, how to say, half-half. And that's why you have a lot of people, they come to the Spiritism movement looking for, okay, what should I do to the heteronomous approach? But you have a lot of other people who doesn't want this anymore. And the good of Spiritism is it can attend both. And the problem is only when one is trying to impose his view to the other. And this is not working. We have to keep the universality of the Spiritism. And then it will follow, how to say, the track of the evolution.
But you know, one of the things we observe when you mentioned from heteronomy to autonomy is that we need to boost critical thinking in people. And that's what we lack sometimes. People don't want to reason their faith. And when you finalized with your slide quoting that unshakable faith is the one that, you know, resists to anything, we need to go back to this critical thinking and to think for ourselves. And that takes some, let's say, spiritual maturity. Many people still want to be told what to do, right?
Yes, and you see, we are coming from monarchies, then religious influence, and now what do we have today? We have materialism. Consume to make a good consumer, and you have to work this, that. So even the materialism does not like so much the autonomy. You know, they prefer the people to follow what the political leaders are saying, and that you come with advertisements that you buy what you don't need, basically all these things. This is also something, how to say, which is slowing down this critical sense, as you told, because the COVID, including, is a huge opportunity we have today to think about these things anymore. I'm confined now. I cannot go more than 1 kilometer away from my house, except if I have to buy food or to go to the doctor or whatever. So we really have time to see, is it really needed to make all these things, to run like we ran before and so on. So it's a huge opportunity for us to think about what is really necessary and what is really essential and what is not. And by thinking, we really find, we already had 6 or 8 weeks confinement earlier in the spring. We still are now in the first week out of probably 6 or 7 or 8 until Christmas that will come now. But we can find a lot of advantage to it. It's more quiet, less pollution. You see, you have more time you lose less time into the travels and so on. You have more time to read, to study, to think about, to analyze, and it's really a big opportunity to develop, and we should really take the advantage to disseminate now. Keep calm and read Kardec, this famous campaign, in order to work and to develop this critical sense that we need if we want really the world to progress and in the right way.
Wow. It's like, right, Paloma, it closed with the best part of it all.
Yes.
Only Spiritism gives us that, the seeking of the good in these circumstances. So we can't thank you enough, right, Paloma, for this moment with us.
Absolutely. We are so grateful. And when we were talking about Kardec's really being a visionary in how he approached Spiritism, that is to trigger our conscience, it reminded me of the beginning of the Heaven and Hell book, where he goes through so many thought process that people have, and he breaks it down. If we just took the time to read, which we have now, and Charles is reminding us, we have now. even if we feel like, I don't know, I don't want to be in a religion situation because of this connection, we have the time to dedicate and read just a little bit to boost our understanding. If anything, you can say, I read it and I don't agree.
Exactly.
Right?
But again, I don't want to say that only Spiritism can enable this, because it would be pretentious, and Kardec never wrote that. He did not write out of Spiritism, there is no salvation. He wrote out of charity, there is no salvation. So what is the most important is not your belief, is what you do with it. But really what Spiritism brought me is to have, again, this previous slide, the understanding of why to do it, and then having this autonomy. It's my own will to do the good, because nobody is threatening me, or I don't want any how to say, compensation, nothing. I just do it because I want to do it, and because I understand that that's the way, that's the path, in harmony with the law of nature, to go and to progress. And this rational approach is really the revolution that Kardec brought. And I think it will take still, you see, 163 years ago already from the Spirit's book. It may take another couple of centuries until really the majority of the people in the world understand it, and also can benefit of it for the own work of our moral reform, really, that we become better persons.
Beautiful. As Paloma said, what you said is visionary. So, it brings to us like this vision of a new world, and it begins with us, as you said, Charles. So here's an invitation for everybody in a world that is like, yes, we need to speak up for the good, to illuminate where we are, but we can't forget it always begins with us, within ourselves. If we show an appearance, I can have a curriculum here about positions. In the spiritual realm, it doesn't mean anything. What means everything is how we vibrate. So there's so much food for thought. And for those who are here now asking questions, we're not able to answer to your questions right now because it had to be pre-recorded because of the difference in time between Europe and us. But we assure you that we'll be diligent enough to relay your questions to Charles and make sure that you get your answers addressed. Okay? So we encourage you to ask. We encourage you to make comments, because this conversation here is a gift for us. In a day and at a time in which in the United States alone, there is much commotion. We hope that these vibrations we are creating together at this moment may be consoling, bringing relief, new hopes, renewal. All right? Yes, Charles. So we want to say, let's stay hopeful, because Jesus said it's the good news. It's all about. But it is not that this hope, imaginary hope, it's a certainty that we are progressing. We need patience, and we need resilience and endurance in the good, always seeking the good in spite of it all. So thank you, Charles, time and again, and we hope you can come back, because I know you have more to share. I know we have more. We know it, right?
It will be a pleasure for me always, and I really warmly thank you for the opportunity, Vanessa, Paloma. And of course, I fully confirm, please bring the questions. It will be a big pleasure for me to answer.
Great. Thank you so much. So, Paloma, we now would like to ask you to kindly please lead us into the spiritual passes in the final prayer. All right?
All right. Let us close our eyes and find a comfortable position. Let us take some deep breaths, allowing our body to relax and visualizing a large field of lavender. You can touch the beautiful flowers, feel its textures. You can inhale the smell of sweet lavender. And now the color of lavender surrounds us, involving us in feelings of healing, peace. We now visualize at the end of the field a person. He turns around and we are now closer and closer, and it's Jesus. Jesus extending his hands to us as if calling us to see a beautiful sunset over the horizon. We hold Jesus' hands and we look over to where he's pointing. And it's the most beautiful colors in the sky that we have seen. We visualize this color so bright, shining, so beautiful, that makes us feel closer to God. God prepared that moment for you. And visualizing it, we can feel that everything is okay. God allows us to see the sun rise and the sun set every single day. And we feel hope. We feel the good. We now visualize our homes, the same shining, bright color permeating our homes, going through every single room, expanding it everywhere, creating a circle of protection around our homes, around our loved ones. We allow the doctors and nurses that are now visiting us to come closer. They are here to help treat us, disperse all the energies, and allow new ones to permeate us. Dear loving Master, we are enormously grateful for the beautiful teachings we received today, reminding us of the works of Kardec, brings us closer to a faith that is unshakable, pushing us to study more, inspiring us to use our reason, and most of all, understanding that the teachings are universal There are no labels, there are no religions, because the laws of God is only one and applies to all of us. We ask, Master, that we continue strong in the pathway of Spiritism, asking for strength and courage to disseminate the beautiful works that came through Kardec and many others after him. And Master, we especially want to thank Charles for being here and bringing all these studies to us. And under your protection and with your permission, we ask to close these moments of tonight, and so be it. Vanessa, you're mute.
Sorry. Yes, I'm always muting myself and I forget. But again, thank you, Charles, for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, and may this peace of Jesus stay with us, with all of us.
And thank you, Paloma and friends. Stay tuned, because at Kardec Radio, there's always more. If you have any question, or if you need particularly spiritual assistance, don't forget to write to us at kardecradio@gmail.com. We here in Chantilly, Virginia, the Spiritist side of Virginia, is always available to give a hint. All right? A big hug to everybody, and until next time.